What is up, everyone? My name is Chris and Fanzon. You are listening to the Hidden Doors podcast. And today we're talking about how to go from a consumer mindset to an investor mindset. I feel like a lot of us may think we have a investor mindset, but we have a consumer mindset. And how do we get to that damn investor mindset? So that's what we're talking about today. If you like what you hear, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on more videos and podcasts like this. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so how do you change yourself from a consumer mindset to an investor mindset? So I feel like I don't know about every other country. I live in the United States, and I feel like we have a very consumer heavy mindset. I just finished reading a book called The Changing World Order by Ray Dalio, and there's certain stages countries or empires go through. It's funny, like there's 5 or 6 stages. In the beginning, the stage is the people in the country are poor and they know they're poor and they act like they're poor. Then they're rich. They're rich because they invest right. They're acting like they're poor, so they invest, they save, and then they actually become rich. And then they still act like they're poor, though. So that's like a really emerging country. When you are rich because you saved and you invest and you're productive, but you're still not consuming so much because you're acting like you're poor, ooh, you're doing well. But then you get to the next stage and you're rich, and then you act like you're rich. That's when your consuming starts catching up with you a little bit, but you're still productive enough where because you invested in the right things, so you're rich and you act like you're rich. Next stage is you are poor and you act like you're rich. That is not a good stage. That's like a stage the United States is in right now. And that means we're a consumer heavy country. And we're not investing. And so how do we get out of the consumer mindset? So there are a handful of books that I've read that I will point you all to in the description here. A couple of them off the top of my head are Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, I think his name is. The Simple Plan to Wealth by Collins, I think something Collins. I forget his name. JP Collins or something. Those are 2 really good ones. One talks about a shifting away from the consumer mindset into the investor mindset. The other one talks about a simple plan to invest your money. And a lot of the information that I'm talking about here is because I read a lot on this subject and I try to inform myself. And my plan, which I think everyone's plan should be, is if I stopped working today, will my investments and my assets bring in enough positive cash flow that I can stop working? That's the goal. Is if you're a full-time worker and you think you have assets, we'll talk about whether you think you actually have assets or not. Can your assets bring in enough positive cash flow to 1, stop you from working, and 2, cover all of the expenses that you have throughout to sustain yourself? Me, I personally don't have this yet, and I'm trying for it. So I'm investing in assets. There's probably more assets to go. I'm trying to start my own business per se, sort of, right? I'm doing this podcast. I eventually want to turn this into an amazing media company where we create amazing content, but we also turn into a business where we can make money. But I'm not at the stage yet. That's my goal, where you could technically stop working and your assets bring in the cash to sustain your life. That is the goal. That is how you protect yourself. And that is how you turn from a consumer to an investor. So a misconception, I think the biggest misconception, which is I don't know why people even talk about this, is if you ever ask someone, what is your greatest asset? Or like, yeah, it's just like, what is your greatest asset? You ask an average person, And if they have a house, they'll tell you my house. My house is my greatest asset. And that is the biggest misconception about invest. That is not an investment, or like, what is your biggest asset or what is your greatest investment? A house. That is not a great asset, and that is not a great investment. Hold on. Just sipping on my coffee here. Um, let's define a great asset. I don't even know if you consider in a house an investment or an asset, but some people like to throw that term around. To me, asset or an investment, or a good asset or a good investment, brings positive cash flow in, meaning you get more cash than you put in. Very simple. And a house is simply not a positive cash flow operation. So I don't even know why the hell we're telling people that it is an investment or a asset, because it's not. It literally loses you money. And just do the math on it. Everyone might have different priced houses, but just because the numbers are easy, if you were to buy a house, let's say 500,000, and 5 years later you sell it for, I don't know, 550,000, or let's say 600,000. You made 100,000 on the sale, and you're all happy. Woo! You are happy. You made $100,000. Okay, well, you did not make $100,000. That is not a positive cash flow operation here. What did you spend on interest? If you most likely you took out a mortgage, what did you spend on interest? Let's assume it's a 3% interest rate. 3% interest rate on a $500,000 house on average might be what? 15, depending on how much money you put down, but it could be $10,000 to $15,000 a year. $10,000 to $15,000 a year for 5 years, right? What is that? That is $75,000. So about $50,000 to $75,000 you just spent on interest. Now, taxes. Taxes are another thing. Let's say on average you pay $10,000 a year on taxes. That's another $50,000. So on average, you may have just spent $100,000 on taxes and interest, and you made $100,000 on the difference of the asset price when you sold it. That is making zero. That is a $0 operation there. And that's good. If you can break even, that is beautiful. But you're probably not breaking even, because you have to pay when you buy a house, you have to pay all these freaking expenses. Like you have to potentially pay for points, and you have to pay no, you don't have to pay the realtor when you're buying. Only the seller pays the realtor. I forget all the expenses. You need an inspector. It could cost you $15,000. There's like a lot of things you have to put down. It depends on the cost. I think it's usually around 3 to 4% of the price of the house is usually how much it costs as expenses. That's not including the down payment. So let's say it's 3 to 4% of a $500,000 house, right? About $20,000. So 100,000 plus 20,000, and then when you sell, you have to pay the realtor. I don't even know how much you got to pay. Let's just assume it's a good price, and you only paid $10,000 or something. So you just spent on my made up model here, my made up numbers. If you made $100,000 on a house, you paid over those 5 years in expenses that you're not getting back $130,000. You lost $30,000. This is not a money-making operation. Back to my original point. This house, or your greatest investment, or if you think it's your greatest investment, it is losing you money. And that, when you lose money, that is not something that if you stopped working tomorrow is going to sustain your life. It is a losing operation. So you shouldn't think of, if you live in a house, should be thought of as a purchase, like a car. It's a purchase for you. It's not an investment. It's something where you can live a stable life with your family if you want to live there, but it is not an investment. The way that you turn it into an investment is if you rent it out. If you rent it out and the cash flow that comes in from the rent is positive, that is an investment. If you were to maybe buy a decrepit house that you renovated and you sold for a higher price and you made positive cash flow, that's an investment. But living in a house is not an investment. That is a money losing operation, from taxes, from fees when you pay for the house, from fees when you sell the house, from interest rates that you have to pay the mortgage company, and from maintenance around the house. That is a money losing operation. So that is the first thing. Get the hell out of this damn consumer mindset and think that your house is an investment, because it's not. Two, another thing is, well, actually on that point, let's step back here. If like, I think most people in this country, in the United States, I don't know about other countries, but I assume somewhat similar. Sometimes it's probably more drastic, but most people work at a company and they're salary based. For those people, if you're salary based, then in most cases, unless you have investments that are bringing in more cash, uh, that you could actually quit your job, which I would assume most people don't have that. I would assume the average doesn't. The average person probably works at a company or some organization or the government, and they make an income through salary. If that is you and you have a house and you think your house is your greatest investment, it is not. You are your greatest investment. And I'm not saying you're your greatest investment because it's a cliche thing to say, oh, you are your greatest investment, and I'm trying to inspire you. I like to inspire people, but I am not doing that here. You literally, technically, financially, logically are your greatest investment, because you yourself are bringing in the cash flow. So if you are working a salary job and you have a house, your mindset needs to shift here. Your house is not your greatest asset. You literally are your greatest asset, because if you stopped going to work, you would stop bringing in cash. So that is a little mindset shift that you need. And if that is the case, if you are your greatest asset, then you need to treat yourself like your greatest asset. And what I mean by that is, at the moment, until you build up businesses and maybe your investments are bringing in cash, you are the most relied upon asset to bring in cash. And if you're a business, and if you were thinking about yourself as a business, you need to think about, how can you get more cash? How can you sustain this cash and prevent it from blowing up? When I say blowing up, meaning like you getting hurt or not being able to go to work anymore. Because if you can't go to work anymore, then the cash stops coming in. So you need to treat yourself as a business or as an investment. And how do you do that? Well, how I would do that and how I do that, because I'm in the same boat. I'm not coming here preaching as if like I have 15 investments all bringing in so much cash that I can quit my job. I'm not preaching. I'm on the same path as most people, where I'm trying to get to the position where I can do this. I'm not there yet. But I do treat myself as an asset or an investment. And what that means is, I have to be able, because I'm relying upon myself the most right now, be able to continue to bring in positive cash flow and get better at it. Get better at it, meaning get better at bringing in cash flow, make more of it. How do you do that? Well, to sustain yourself, you need to think about yourself as a machine. You're literally a machine. You're just a human machine. So you eat healthy, you exercise, you stay fit. I meditate so I can stay mentally clear and not overly stressed. And I take care of my body. I set goals for myself. I set a vision of where I want to be in a few years. I have long-term visions of where I want to be. I'm literally looking at myself as an asset. Not only that, I know that I need to be better and improve. So if you were owning your own business and you're making a certain amount of money in the business, a logical thing might be I want to improve the business every year. I want to get better and make more money and build the business higher and higher. Same thing with me. How do you do that? Well, if you are your asset, learning, learning and improving is the biggest way that you can bring in more cash flow. Challenge yourself, learn and read, stay up to date on trends, and build alliances. That means network. So you are your asset. Treat yourself good and always look to improve. That is if you that is you. You're the current average person, just like me. That is how you treat your investments, right? Just like you would think that your house needs to be kept up to date, and you do the lawn. If there's a hole in the wall, you fix the hole. You're treating your asset, well, you think it's your asset, but it's really not. Well, you're treating your asset nice. You have to do the same thing to your body. So next thing is, which I think is a misconception, is people who, let me get a sip of my damn coffee first. Okay. If you are not someone who uh, likes to read up on investing and you think it's overly complicated, I don't have. If someone was like super, super into finance where they knew all of the nuances, I wouldn't be able to hold my own with them. I know 80%. I know that 80% of the stuff that needs to get me. I know the 80% of the stuff that needs to get me the most impact here. I don't need to know all the dumb nuances that it just really doesn't matter, in my opinion. But if you're someone who doesn't want to invest any time into thinking about this, and you think I'm just going to put my money in the bank, I'm not going to invest, here's where you might be a little off. Is even if you think you're not investing, you are investing. If you're putting your money in the bank and it's sitting in just the bank and maybe your savings account or your checking account or wherever, and mostly you're not making any kind of interest on it, because if it's just in like a savings account, what do they make, like 0.01%? So you're essentially just putting your money in cash in US dollars. If that is what you do and you don't think that's an investment, that's just something you want to hold on your own, keep safe, well, keep in mind you are investing. You're just investing in a currency. So no matter what you do in this world, you cannot get away from investing. You put your money all in cash, then what you're doing is you're confident, or maybe you're not confident, but if people who put a lot of money in a certain currency are investing in that currency, you're investing in the US dollar. And the issue is the US dollar is just like every currency out there, especially that's not tied to a hard asset like, before 1971, the US dollar was tied to gold. That was a hard asset. You can literally take your note or the dollar into, I believe, a bank, and they'd give you gold. I don't know how the hell it worked, but you if you had money, you could exchange it for gold. That link is gone, so now it's just the dollar. What was my point? My point, I think, is yes. If the money, the currencies are erratic, and mostly erratic in the sense of inflation. Not so much deflation, but there are deflation periods, but inflation, meaning that same dollar that you had 2 years ago will get you less than it did 2 years ago. So if you have $1 and that $1 was able to buy you 3 apples, in 2 years, it might only be able to buy you 2 apples. And in 20 years, you might not be able to buy any apples, maybe a quarter of an apple. The point is that dollar has less buying power. You need more money to buy the same thing that you used to buy, which means if you just keep your cash in the bank, you're actually losing money, because inflation, which happens almost every year, in certain periods happens a lot, especially when you print a lot. So during these COVID times, the U.S. government, the central banks have been printing money like absolutely freaking crazy, which means inflation is high. That means if your money was in the bank, you are technically losing money, because that money is worth less than it was in the past. So even if you think that you're not investing, you are investing. And one of the best ways to protect yourself is put your money into assets. Now, I think it's important to have a stash of cash that you can access quickly, because if you have money in investments, sometimes it's hard to extract that cash, to call liquidating. It's hard to liquidate. You can't. It depends what kind of asset it's in. Let's say you own a restaurant. It's hard to. It might be hard to. You would have to sell the restaurant to liquidate all the cash in it. If it's in a stock, it's a little easier. But what I'm saying is, when you have cash on hand in the bank, a small sum of cash, it's easy to pay for things that you need. Maybe it's a big medical expense, or the roof needs a fix, or something that you need a couple $1,000s for. It's nice to have a little bundle of cash, but outside of that, it should be strategically outlaid for you. What I mean by that is, you should have that small bundle of cash in a certain amount strategically put in the bank. It not should just be everything is thrown in the bank. The rest should be invested in assets. And there are many assets. I'm not going to tell you everything that you need to be investing in. What I personally do is I just invest in large, broad index funds, in stock and bond index funds. And I use the equation of I minus my age from 120, and whatever that number is, that's the percent I put in my stocks versus my bonds. So it's something like 90%, or a little maybe less than 90%. But about 90% of my money goes to broad stock index funds. The rest goes into bond index funds. And this way, if just like serious inflation occurs, it's nice to have assets, because, like I say, your buying power with cash goes down. So that dollar that you had that got you 3 apples, now it might only get you 1 apple. To get 3 apples, you might have to pay $3. So guess what? The person who has and owns the apples, they're pretty happy, because now they're getting 3. They need $3 instead of $1, which means they can exchange their assets, and their assets in this example is apples, for more money, or whatever the equivalent of whatever the supply and demand is demanding for that set of apples. Same thing with, if I have my investments heavily loaded in stocks, my buying power for cash might have gone down, but I can always sell those stocks and get cash back. So just reverse the example with apples and use stocks. So if I have 3 stocks and I want to get money because I need to pay for stuff, now I get $3 instead of 1, because high inflation has hit. But if I never owned any assets, then I would be stuck with my $1. I owned assets, so now I got $3 back because I sold them. And, if I didn't, I would have 1. Now, the idea is you don't really want to sell your assets. Just let them sit there and grow beautifully. I put my money in index funds. I just let them grow, and I don't touch them. So that is why, going back to what I said, is even if you think you're not investing, you're investing, because you're investing in a currency, and a currency is fickle. It is erratic. It changes depending on central governments printing of money. It changes based on supply and demand. It changes based on a whole plethora of things, and it's an investment whether you think it is or not. So my advice is, even if you are not an investor type of person, read up on it. Read up on the couple books that I have linked in the description, and I promise you'll be a little bit more informed, and you'll be able to put your money in better places. Okay, so what else can get you out of that damn consumer mindset? I think that's all I want to talk about. I can't think of anything else. I just went on a damn rant here. Okay, I have a few books linked in the description. Go check them out. Buy a copy. They're like $7, or they're probably $7 to $10. I don't even know what the hell the price would be, but they will help you get out of this consumer mindset into an investor mindset. Your goal should be, which my goal should be, invest in assets that bring positive cash flow to you. If you invest in assets that always suck money out and no money comes back in, that is not an investment. That is a consumer purchase. A house, a car, all the bull crap that you buy that you have to put money into and you never see that money come back, or if you do see it come back, it comes in lower, so you lose money. That is a consumer purchase, not an investment, not a good asset. Get good assets. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, don't forget, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. If you haven't done so already, hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on more podcasts and videos like this. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take it easy. I will see you next time.